Welcome everyone. Today we will be talking about disaster risk management. Essentially introducing you to what exactly is disaster and how do you manage such disaster or such risk. Explain the basic terms and concepts is what we will be talking around. Understand the impact, understand the influence, the catastrophic effect that a disaster can have, and how to mitigate it. So we need to understand those process, purpose, and characteristics of a disaster risk management. Now, allow me to begin with hazard, a possible sources of danger, and this possible sources of danger can lead to injury, can lead to death, can lead to harm, not only to life but also to property. So that there are damages to property, partial damages, complete damages, and that is what we like to go around it. So hazard is a possible source of danger which might impact the livelihood, and the property thereby. So disaster is, on the other hand, is a sudden, unexpected, unplanned, unforeseen event which cause catastrophic losses to life, resources, properties, and probably it impedes the community's ability to progress. It halts it. It is a blot on the humanity or the community or the society where disaster strike. So it is something that is not been unforeseen, not been planned for, not been have a foresight natures altogether. It comes as a surprise and not a pleasant one, may I say so. Example is earthquake that has been there in the peak. If you can see the peak that comes around here. Similarly, we have risk, the possibility of suffering harm or losses. Definitely, yes. You see what is happening out here. You see the children's with their skin rashes around here. What are they doing? Is it good? Is it a very good sight? Probably no. Vulnerability, its inability to resist the hazards, to respond when the disaster has occurred, and that is where you feel helpless because you cannot plan for it, you could not anticipate it. It was at one of the moment where probably you were not in the best of the scheme of the things. So it's you be people are vulnerable, the community is vulnerable, and it impacts in a negative sense altogether. So capacity, if you want to go around it, and how can we increase the capacity? Look what is happening. There is a fire in the building and people are trying to douse the fire with water, probably where one person is helping the other person, the second, third, fourth person is running from the sources of water, basically ability to perform by using available resources to reduce the impact, the effect of disaster perhaps. And that is what we are trying to tell about it. There is a fire. This fire can be man-made. This fire can be natural, probably caused to an earthquake, short circuit, and so on and so forth. DRM, or disaster risk management, is a series of actions to reduce the risk of disaster, to minimize the effect of disaster, and probably have a rapid recovery, taking life back to normalcy. And that is what we all aspire to go about it. That is what disaster risk management is all about. It is the factor that probably reduces the impact, reduces the doesn't prolong the negative impact, allows life to come back to normalcy on a normal track. That is what we are trying to do it, minimize the effect of disaster thereabout. So DRM, disaster risk management phases, and what are we looking into it? Disaster is here waiting to happen, and this is what happens to it. The moment disaster strikes, we try to give response, recovery. Probably if there's a fire, we like to douse it. If there's an earthquake, we like to save as many lives, properties as soon as possible. And probably once this response and recovery has taken places, we go into the longer phase for a longer term impact, which is all about rehabilitation, which is all about reconstruction, making life come back to normalcy. It might be crippling at the beginning. So once life has come back to normalcy, can we think or can we prevent mitigation of the disaster? Can this disaster be avoided? If so, how can we avoid it? If not, what can be done to minimize the impact? So that is what we are calling about is preparedness. So action will be taken before, during, and after the occurrence of disaster in absolutely four phases of responses: rehabilitation, prevention, and preparation. Let's talk about prevention and mitigation phase. This phase includes actions to reduce damages for a community before actually the disaster happens. Activities like sensitizing the public about the potential disaster, about the impact that a disaster can have on the community. Can we educate the general public? Can we have classification of disaster? Can we sensitize? Can we educate the people in terms of what behaviors are expected during disaster and post disaster? So that is why we are talking about building codes, where we're talking about public safety regulations. Preparedness phase. It's a set of action that enhances the abilities of the communities, of the government, be it federal, be it provincial, be it local government, to respond to a disaster. Remember, the faster you respond, the lesser the impact would be. And whenever I say impact, along with disaster, it is always negative in nature. Preparedness steps should include developing plan of action in response to the disaster, practice drills and exercise for emergency personnel, putting warning system in place, developing evacuation plans, and installing emergency communication system as on when on basis. And that is what we should all be striving to look forward to. Response phase is immediately after the disaster has happened. What are the quick action that is to be taken during or probably just about the after the disaster? First and foremost thing is to preserve life. Activities should be focused to preserve life, be it human or others, animal that we're talking around it. It is all about first aid and medical care. We should provide an ample amount of safe drinking water, food. People should be provided with adequate safety in terms of shelter. That is what we are looking forward to. People might be required to transport from the disaster prone zone to the normal zone where they might feel a little bit more secure, a little bit more safe, with plenty of potable water made available to them, suitable food made available to them, requisite medicine being applied onto them as on when on basis. This is what the response phase would be all about it. In the rehabilitation and the reconstruction phase, action must be taken to restore the community to the normal state through back to normalcy, so that people should be able to pick up the thread before the disaster, and how they wish to live life should be able to go around it. It is very well said in theories, but very difficult in practice otherwise. So definitely we should have reconstruction of houses, reconstruction of public transportation, public infrastructure, like roads, like electricity. Everything should be made into clear. We should make those basic infrastructure, make available to the general public. Restore livelihood is the fundamental aim of this phase. Disaster in communities, in case of disaster, people at the community level have more to lose, because they are the one who have been hit by the disaster. They are the one who have loss of lives of their family members, of property probably, whether it's a major disaster or minor disaster. The people in the action, in the scheme of the things, will be impacted negatively. And their catastrophic impact can be there lifelong. See, I'm just giving you some pics about what happens in a disaster. Everybody is with folded hands. You look out here, people are actually begging because they are feeling deprived. Here, this is a classic picture where you see a mother carrying her child almost under the water. She's walking past. It is a drought. It's not. It's a flooded situation and not a drought situation that goes around it. So if you go around, this is absolutely flooded. If you look into it, this is actually a earthquake prone zone where people have lost it, and this is where we it is talk about drought. Disaster communities, on the other hand, communities has the most to gain if they can reduce the impact of disaster by effectively using their capacity. This concept gave rise to the ideas of community-based disaster management, where communities are put in the forefront. They're aware of what actually is happening and how it is being done everywhere. Disaster management is a process of disaster risk management in which at-risk communities are actively engaged to reduce their vulnerabilities, to enhance their capabilities, to strengthen their position, to eliminate the weaknesses, if any, through identification of the strengths and the weakness, through analyzing the situation and the environment, through the treatment of the livelihoods, probably looking at the way infrastructure has been built around it by monitoring and having a close lookup of what is to be done. The standard operating practices has to be impacted upon. Evaluation of the risk, disaster risk, as on when on basis. Probably there should be a mock drill every fiscal year, every annual year. The community should take part. This will keep them prepared, mentally prepared, emotionally prepared for any eventualities that might be happening. Let me wind up this particular video with this 6 steps of disaster risk management. First and foremost, distinguish the community that is more prone to disaster. Try to build a rapport and understand and identify, probably sensitize them, educate them in their own languages, bring out example with which they can relate to. This is the second step of disaster risk management. The third step is the participatory community risk assessment, where they can look at to what is expected during the disaster, post disaster, what behaviors needs to be exhibited. This participatory community risk assessment, they should not only be given the benchmark practices but also be invited to give their inputs, because their input might be localized and might be much more practical and easier to implement. That is what we are talking about, participatory community risk assessment. Once the community is being brought in, they will feel much more empowered. Then it is where the participatory actions takes place. The last 2 steps are community-led implementation of the project, where community actually built. You look what the community is doing around it. Is building trenches all together, making sure that they are safeguarding themselves to a certain thing. Probably channelizing the flow of water, avoiding a flood-like situation. Participatory monitoring and evaluation plan as on when on basis is community-based disaster risk management (CBDRM) project, where everybody is made equal stakeholders, shareholders. Probably only then the ownership of disaster risk management will come into play. With this word, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video till the very end.